Hi guys, so welcome to this tutorial this week. So we thought we'd try a video version of the tutorial this week instead of just taking photos and give you guys a chance to see, the garden actually a bit more live. And today's tutorial is about harvesting onions. And not just about harvesting onions, we can also talk a wee bit about growing onions as well. We've got two different types of onions we've planted this year. The two types are onion sets and onion seeds. So onion sets are the ones that already go in the ground looking like small little dried onions, and they're a lot easier to grow. They're quicker, they don't take as much looking after, you don't have to have them in a glass house to start with, and they tend to be ready a wee bit earlier. From personal experience, I find they don't quite get as big and they don't store as well as seed onions. So we're going to look at the two. We're going to harvest a few onion sets that are ready now, and then we'll look at our seed onions and we'll show you how we cure them and get them ready for storing for the winter. Okay, so this is a bed of onion sets. You can see we have quite a generous spacing here. That is about 8 inches apart, so we have got a large space between each onion. That's so they can grow as big as possible. Also, they get as much air to flow around them as possible to restrict disease and fungus from getting in. And it is also good for hoeing. So when they're smaller and easier to get at, you can get at them with the hoe to knock the weeds back, so you don't have to hand weed them as much. You can see we've got a few failures here, a few that have actually been done by a bit of rot, but it's not too bad. Also, looking at the bed, you can see that they're pretty much ready to be harvested because they're starting to, discolor. They're starting to drop back a wee bit, and you can see they're quite loose in the ground, so they're ready to kind of come out. That one, was really easy to take out, so that's a sign that it's ready. Whilst we're storing them, we want to make sure that the soil's off them and they're not too wet. You also want to choose the right day to be harvesting them. You don't want to choose to harvest them on a really, really wet day. You want to harvest them on, a day like today. We've had it dry for a couple of days. There's not been too much rain, and that gives the onion a chance to dry out. If it's taken in a lot of moisture, it just means that you have to spend a lot more time getting that moisture out before you can season it. So let the weather do a lot of the work for you. Different techniques to harvest onions, and a few different ways that people used to do it, and some that aren't as recommended anymore. One used to be always to bend the collar back and let them lie flat, and that was going to stop moisture and stop growth getting to the onion, so that then it would be easier to dry them out later. The recommendation now is to not do that, so to actually just harvest them when you do have a good dry day. Another old technique, and this one can still be used, is to loosen the roots up slightly. So I've just given that a wee pull, and I'll leave the onion like that for a couple of days, and that just means it can't get as much moisture up from the roots, but it'll stay alive and it'll just slowly start to dry out. So you could do that for a couple of days, unless you've got really wet weather coming. And if you do have wet weather coming on a day like today, it could be best just to harvest the whole thing. And just to harvest the whole onion, tidy it up a wee bit, just make sure there's no rotten bits, and leave the skin on. Don't be tempted to pull that skin off. Let that all dry, and then that's going to turn into that brown skin that you're used to seeing the onions in the shops. You want to dry them in a greenhouse, in a polytunnel, up high, really hot, so that they can get all the moisture away, and all that green will go from the leaves. So yeah, we're going to store these and start drying them in the polytunnel, but I'm also going to show you the onions that we were growing from seed, and you can see the difference. Okay, so guys, welcome to the second onion bed, and this one were all planted from seed. So we didn't plant direct in the ground, we sowed in modules, had them in the glass house to come on, and whenever they were nicely established in the modules, then we planted them out into the bed. You can see they're not dying back as quickly as the sets, so they've still got a wee bit to go. We'll not really harvest these just yet, but they're about the same size or even bigger than our set onions already, and they've still got some nice growth to do. So for actual big quality onions, or even some show winners, I'd advise growing from seed and leave them a bit longer. So I'd say a couple more weeks in these ones, and then again choose a hot day to harvest them and get them into the polytunnel or greenhouse to store. Okay, so now we're going to take the onions that we harvested from sets and we're going to start to cure them in the polytunnel. So we'll go there now. Okay guys, so we're in the polytunnel here and we have our frame up for curing the onions. So this is just a DIY frame made out of chicken wire and a bit of timber. Now ready to store our onions up in our frame. Again, it's really hot up here. You know, you're right at the top of the polytunnel. All the heat rises up. You want to make sure there's still good ventilation when you're curing your onions, but we have our doors open quite a lot. And yeah, they'll spend the rest of the summer drying out. And when they have properly dried and lost all their green colour, then we can take them into our hut and store them either in boxes, or we can even plait them together and have them on the windowsills. So simple enough, just have them up on the mesh, but make sure that they're not touching, because if they're touching each other and one has a wee bit of rot, that rot will spread and it'll go into the other one. So make sure they're not touching, and make sure the onion is nice and clean and doesn't have too much soil or anything on them. So just keep spreading them out, and yeah, I'll just keep going until the whole thing is covered. And yeah, not only will they be great for curing in here, the smell of the onions is really good for keeping away aphids. Aphids hate alliums. They hate anything in the allium family, like garlic or onions, chives, you know, all those things. The smell really gets the aphids to go away. So with our tomatoes, which we always have a bit of a problem with aphids, you know, this will really help. We've already got our garlic here. We've got our garlic that we've been drying up here for the last few weeks, and you have such a strong smell of garlic whenever you first put them in. Whenever I fill this up with onions, it's going to be such a strong smell of onions. That does go after a while, but yeah, it's got another purpose, and for that's keeping the aphids away. Yeah, so I hope this has been useful. A lot of people always ask us about curing onions and how to have them good to store, and there are just a few different things that you have to think about, and all those accumulations of things do add up to making a good onion store. So we want to think about choosing the right time to harvest, whenever they're actually ready, not letting them go too far that they might develop any mold, and yeah, keeping them separate when they're drying in the polytunnel. So hope this video has been useful, and guys, do feel free to use the comment section in on the blog, because yeah, if we want to chat about it, I can answer any comments that people might have as well. Okay, yeah, thank you. See you for the next time.